Welcome back to Super Doc Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Caudill, and today I'm thrilled to be interviewing my friend, Dr. Meredith Shur. She's an OB-GYN on the East Coast in New York. Welcome, Meredith.
Hi, Marissa. I'm so glad to finally be on the podcast with you.
I know we've been planning this for months. I'm really
I
excited
know.
to chat with you and catch up. So, you were just telling me because we met in 2023, which I guess was about a year into your midlife transformation journey, let's say.
Yes.
But I think it's very relatable to me and to many of the people who will be listening to this podcast as physicians in midlife.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. Tell me about your 50th birthday and what happened.
Yeah. So I turned 50 in February 2022. And my husband threw this incredible party for me. It was a weekend away in a beautiful house with my closest friends
Oh,
and family. And it was an absolute dream until I saw the credit card bill. And I had a complete meltdown. I could not believe that he had spent that much money on a party. And it blew up into a huge fight. And then I felt absolutely terrible. And I started thinking to myself, it's my 50th birthday. There is no reason why I should be so stressed out about spending what now seems like a small amount of money, but at that time seemed like a large amount of money on a celebration. And that was when I decided that something needed to change and I needed to not only rely on my W-2 income, but to find other sources of income as well.
I think that's so relatable to probably the vast majority of physicians who might be listening today. Because we went into medicine, most of us, because we wanted to be healers and help people, of course, but also with the promise that you're going to earn a really good living and be comfortable and not have to worry about money. And then you get there, and especially if you're in one of the lower paying fields like pediatrics or primary care, but even if you're in a higher paying surgical field like you, somehow it's like, where is this promise of money? Like, where did it go? And it makes you
Absolutely.
feel like a failure. Like, what am I doing wrong? Am I overspending? Do I not understand money? But the reality is that, well, what have you learned? I mean, I've learned a lot, but what have you learned over these last few years investigating this?
I mean, I think is so much exactly what you say. I think that basically there were certain expectations after all of the years of training and all of the money spent on education. I am still paying off my med school loans, which is hard to believe, but getting there, but not quite done. And I live in New York, which is a very high cost of living area with really high state income taxes. And so we were paying student loans. We were paying huge amounts of money in taxes every year, and it was just chipping away at what seemed like it should be plenty of money for a comfortable life. But at the end of the day, it really was not enough to have the kind of life that I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we were hungry or unable to go to the movies or anything like that, but I just decided at 50 years old, this is when I want to try to do more. And I needed to figure out a way.
Yeah. And so for me, it was a tax bill. When my husband and I both became attendings and we started making real money, and then I was doing our taxes, and it was just like, what the? Because
Yeah.
it was a presidential election year, and Biden and his wife had revealed their taxes, and I looked at the article and I'm like, we paid more in taxes than Joe Biden. My mindset at that point was like, I don't mind paying taxes. Like, we have enough. Like,
Right.
this is my contribution to the greater good. It's kind of my patriotic duty. And then I realized, like, okay, if the president of the United States is paying less in taxes than I am, then perhaps we're paying more than we should be. And that was when I really got into figuring out, like, how as a W-2 earner can we reduce our tax burden? And I think probably that for you too contributed to you finding out about real estate. We both ended up
Yep.
with the semi-retired MD crew. And we met
Absolutely.
in 2023 there when we were both kind of venturing into the next steps after our first real estate purchases, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I just want to point something else out for people listening. Real estate, and we'll get into it, has been incredible for us, but that wasn't actually the first step that I took. The first step that I took was finding a side gig, which was doing online e-consults for primary care doctors in underserved areas.
Yes.
And it was all asynchronous, all remote. I really felt like I was making a difference, helping other physicians in places where they could not get their patients to see gynecologists easily. Um, but that 1099 income, even though it wasn't a lot of money, it allowed us to start doing a home office tax deduction. And
Mm,
that is a huge way to start reducing your tax bill, especially when your mortgage payments are high, your electricity bills are high, everything in your home. All of those can become partial expenses to your 1099 income.
yeah,
And so I just wanted to point that out to people. It doesn't have to be a huge first step.
that's great. Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like we both had the same awakening. Like I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and the Cash Flow Quadrants book. And I
Yeah.
remember lying in bed during the pandemic and showing my husband, I'm like, look, we're in the wrong quadrant. Like we're totally winning in the employed quadrant, but like this is not the quadrant that we wanted to be in. But at that point, it just felt still a mystery. Like, how do I get into the BI quadrants, right? Like, or even the
Yeah.
self-employed, I realized I had done that before. It's like that still has the same issues. You can do some things to reduce your tax
Yeah.
burden, like you're talking about. You have more deductible expenses and things.
Yes.
But still, even as a high income self-employed person, you don't have as many options as a person with a business does or as an investor does. Um,
100%.
yeah. So, okay. So you started to expand your understanding of financial things. You started to go outside your comfort zone. I mean, tell me, what was that like for you buying your first property and even taking on that 1099 job? Because you were working full time. It's not like you
Yeah.
had all the extra time and you have young kids,
Yep.
had young kids. Like I know they're a little older now, but like, so
Mhm.
how was that for you? How did you work it in?
Yeah, so the first 1099 was very, very low bar of entry. I could do these e-consults during my commute on the train. So that was a really nice sort of way to wade into it. And also to show myself that I had bandwidth to take on more.
Mhm.
I think we all have this I'm so busy dialogue in our heads, and we are busy, but that doesn't mean that we are tapped out. There are for sure, especially in physicians, reserves of energy that we can tap into to do more. So that was one of the first things I realized is that, yeah, there's definitely more that I can be doing. And that was just the first step. And then a very, very old friend of mine who's a pediatrician had been telling me for a couple of years that she was investing in real estate. And I kept looking at her like she was absolutely insane and would not pay attention to her when she was speaking. But after the birthday incident, the next time I saw her, I started to pay attention. I really started to listen to what she was saying. And she introduced me to a community, semi-retired MD, which you alluded to before. And all of a sudden, I found this huge community of other physicians that were investing in real estate and doing myriad other incredible things and still practicing medicine. And that was sort of so eye-opening to me. And that was the beginning of us taking the foray into real estate investing. And of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of the big things that kicked it off for me and saying, this has got to change. So just like so many other people, it sounds so cliched, but that book was really life changing.
Yeah. It's eye opening, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, yeah, it really is. So, in the summer of 2022, I did the introductory course for physicians in terms of learning how to invest in real estate. And the biggest piece of that was not learning about real estate, it was about shifting mindset,
100%.
and realizing that we can do hard things. And it's okay to be beginners again. Sometimes after practicing medicine for a long time, I had already been in attending for like 18 years at that point. The thought of being a newbie was so scary. But the course really allowed us to embrace the fact that we can be lifetime learners, and that when you stop learning, you stop growing as a person. And that was so true for me. I had been so stagnant in my personal growth for so many years because I had not taken on any many new challenges. So the first piece was getting your head around being a beginner, being a newbie, and taking risks.
Uh-huh.
Really hard for me. I am a very risk adverse person by nature. So that was a huge leap for me. And I worked with a coach also who helped me with my mindset. And she just continuously made me run the worst case scenario. What's the worst that can happen? And we would do it. Like right from beginning to end, the worst case scenario, and we'd get to the end, and I would see I'm not dying. Nobody is sick. I'm not going to be, relying on food stamps. Like the worst case scenario is not that bad. And of course, there's a great chance that we were going to end up in the worst case scenario. But I could very clearly see at that point that if we didn't do something different, there was 100% chance that we were going to wind up in a financial situation that we couldn't retire when we wanted to. We couldn't have the life of adventure that I wanted. And so once I started to not fear the unknown, but actually pay attention to what was known at that time, which was that our financial trajectory was not going to get me where I wanted to go, that's what helped me to take the leap into investing. And so we bought our first property in December of 2022. And it was a two-family house that we bought for $185,000. And it was it's in upstate New York. So it's about 2.5 hours away from where we live. But there were reasons why we chose that market. And we still own that property today. And dollar for dollar, it's probably our best earning investment property of all the ones that we have acquired since then. So it was a great first choice, and it was a huge accomplishment just to sign those papers and say, okay, we own an investment property, and it changed everything.
That's awesome. So I want to hone in on a few things that you mentioned there. So the first was about mindset and becoming a beginner again.
Mhm.
That's absolutely essential. I call it embracing failure, right? It's like being
Right.
comfortable with the fact that you're probably not going to get it right.
Mhm.
Um, and then realizing the worst case scenario, my husband and I had to go through the same thing. We're very different personalities. Like I like to learn new things. So for me, that wasn't the hardest part. For me, the hardest part was allowing myself to really dream about what my life could be like differently, because I had told
Mhm.
myself for so many years, like, we're so fortunate, we're so blessed, this is great. But I knew in my heart, like you were saying, like I wanted something more, but I had
Yeah.
this guilt about wanting something more. And I remember sitting in one of those first lessons with Leti, and she was talking about her why and how her why was to own property in Italy and have like an olive orchard garden, whatever you call it. And I was listening to her like, who the hell is this woman? Like, how do you just like, yeah, I guess I'll just have a Tuscan village, like, I mean, it felt to me so outrageous. But I wrote down that my why, my sister and I live across the country from each other. She's my only sibling. We're very
Yeah.
close. And so I wrote my why is Camp Babin. That's her last name. Because I wanted our kids to be able to spend summers together. She's a teacher and she's off in the summers. And this year I had the pleasure of sending Leti and Kenji a photo of me, my kids, and her 3 kids roasting marshmallows over the fire and telling them like, this is our 5th summer at Camp Babin, and we're so grateful that you guys helped to make this happen. Because it really is like about letting yourself want what you deserve to be free to want, and then B, accepting that to get there you're going to have to go into unfamiliar territory and be a little uncomfortable, but it's going to be worth it. And having that community, I think, helped us both so much because you're not alone, which makes all the difference.
So, I mean, that so much of what you said resonates with me. And I do remember in the beginning when you made that commitment that that's how you were going to spend your summers and you were going to get your kids to New Hampshire. And you have absolutely executed on that dream, which is amazing to see. And yeah, there's a guilt of some sort that we shouldn't be striving for more, that
Mm-hmm.
we're so fortunate and we have so much, which is absolutely true. But on the other hand, we're not asking for handouts, right? We're
Right.
not asking someone to give us our dreams on a silver platter. Once you get over the fear, you're willing to dig in and do the hard work. And I know how hard you have worked building your business. I know how hard I have worked in the last few years. I tell everyone I've never worked harder than I have in the last few years. And that's the truth. So, if you really need to think about how much you're willing or able to dig in and set your goals appropriately. Once I got a taste of entrepreneurship and growth, I just wanted more because I was so energized by the learning and so energized by the people that I met and the community. And it's so funny, Marissa, I promise you, I was thinking about this the other day. People talk about how with aging, people's circles and their scope of experience and the people in their lives continue
Mhm.
to narrow, and you get fewer and fewer. And I was absolutely on that trajectory. And then summer of 2022, when I joined Semi-Retired MD and started to meet people, and ever since then, my vision and my life has expanded so much in the last few years in
I have
terms of
goosebumps now as you're talking about that because it's
me too.
true. It's 100% true. Like
Yeah,
I've had so many moments in the last couple of years where I'm just like, I never would have thought, like my 15, 25-year-old self would never have thought that my 50-year-old self was going to be living this amazing life. Like I was celebrating with my coaches in Australia. Like we were dancing to Bon Jovi on the porch at sunrise. This was like last summer. And then this past May, I was in Africa on safari with all these
I
amazing,
know.
I mean, just these things that I just never would have expected could have happened to me in this lifetime have happened.
100%.
And I have friends like you. Like, I mean, you're a real friend. Like, I would invite you into my home. I'm sure you would invite me into your
Yeah.
home. And like, we feel like we know one another because we're having this shared experience and we're so real and vulnerable. Like, once you take that leap, and you're with other people taking that uncomfortable leap, working
Yes.
harder than ever before, like you said, but yet, even though I'm working harder, I'm more energized. I'm not more depleted. Like,
Yeah.
I think when I was in the W-2 working, it felt like I can't take on another thing. That was the narrative, right? Like, that felt like part of the worry of the unknown of doing this
Yes.
new thing. Like, I don't have time. Now I look
Yes.
back on it. I set up my first 2 short-term rentals to take advantage of that tax
Hmm.
advantage while I was working full time with a child who was 1-year-old and 2-year-old at the time. And like these were 800 and 3,000 miles away from our home.
Right.
And like I set them up while working. Like that was a lot of work. That was exhausting. That was like, you put in a full day, you put the baby to bed, and then
Yep.
you sit down and you like work with the designer and shop online and like call a bunch of people and send 50 emails. Like that was a ton of work. Now I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did that. I feel like that would have been impossible now. But now it just is my life. Like there's more blurring, I think, between what feels like work and joy. Um,
100%.
what I want to be doing. And that's what entrepreneurship has brought for me. It sounds like that's
Yeah.
what it's brought for you too. And
Yeah,
you,
100%. And it's that what you said, the energy, right? And we
yeah,
talk about this a lot in our community, but there are things that drain energy from you and there are things that give you energy.
yeah,
And the amount of energy that is given to me through, like you said, true friendships from people that I have met in the last few years. And some of my in real life people don't understand and they think it's crazy that I cherish my friends because some of them I have only literally been in the same room with once or twice in
yeah.
the last few years, but they are such a presence in my life and in my heart.
Uh-huh.
And that has just given me immense energy and joy to be able to have more people in my life and the shared experiences, the shared language that we all speak because we've all done the mindset work. Um, and also, there's just a built-in layer of trust when it's physicians helping other physicians.
Yeah.
We all have been through similar experiences. We all know what it has taken to get where we are. And we all are trying to lift each other up and support each other. And that is a very, very different feeling than a lot of what happens in our daily lives.
Yes, I could go into a deep rabbit hole about that, but I think energetically, this sounds so woo. I can't believe. I mean, myself 5, 6 years ago would not believe that I'm sitting here on a podcast about energies, but like energetically in the workplaces where I worked at university settings, community mental health settings, everyone's good people and they're doing important work. I don't mean to be critical at all, but energetically, I call it the lower half of the cube. Like we're not our best versions of ourselves. It's more of a scarcity
Yeah.
mindset. It's like, no, we can't do that because like you're always trying to do so much with so little. And I feel that the shift that we've had is realizing like you get to choose the version of yourself that you bring to any situation. And so that became the challenge for me. I mean, we're both still in medicine, thankfully, but we're both like trying to figure out like how do you survive as this higher energy version of yourself in this space that's generally scarcity mindset and survival instinct driven. So for me, it became like certainty that I wanted to have this freedom to spend weeks or months every summer in a different place. And when I brought that to my boss at Kaiser, she said, okay, I'm happy to see if we can work something out. And then she came back and it was not her decision, but it was like partners can't be working outside of the state in which they're licensed. So that can't happen. And so I had to say, okay, then I'm going to give my notice. And it was really hard to do that. I mean, it was hard because I was worried about losing all that income. It was hard because I had friends there and I knew that my departure was going to create a lot more work for them. I liked my patients and I was sad to be leaving them. But at the end of the day, I had certainty that like I wanted my life to be of my own design. And so I took that leap and I won't say I've never looked back because honestly, the first year of that transition was a lot of looking back and wondering, have I done the right thing? Should I just go back? I actually had a phone call with my boss to be like, maybe I should go back and do locums work for you guys. Like I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out for a long time. It wasn't instantaneous. But now that I'm 4 years out, I know that I can't go back. Not because it's a bad place to work, but because it's not what I'm here to do in this lifetime. So for you too, like what has that been like in terms of bringing this new version of yourself to your, I don't want to say to your, situation, your work situation, because you're in a partnership, right? Like, as an OB-GYN,
I mean,
commitment that you made to people.
one of the things that became apparent to me quite early in this whole journey was that the obstetrics part of my practice brought me no joy after a while and actually weighed on me emotionally, and just in terms of time, it weighed on me so heavily, and it was such a source of anxiety for me. And then would my negative energy would start to take over my entire demeanor, and I could see it so clearly after a while. And so I set as a goal that I wanted to stop doing obstetrics and only practice gynecology. And it took several years to figure that out. And to be honest, I'm still figuring it out. You and I were just talking, 50% of my revenue was from obstetrics. So my husband and I have created other sources of income, which are fantastic and they help, but they don't replace my entire obstetric income. So I had set a goal of June 30th, 2026. That would be my last day practicing obstetrics. And it was. I still can't, I pinch myself sometimes that I never have to worry about being called in the middle of the night or being called away from a family dinner to go to the hospital. And I have so much gratitude for that. And yet it has brought another challenge, which is, okay, how am I going to replace that lost revenue? And that's what I'm working on right now. And I don't have certainty about that. But what I do have is an enormous network of people that I can talk to and tap into, trying to figure out what the next step is, not only to replace that income, but to do it in a way that brings me joy and energy. And so that's where I am right now. I'd be lying if I said I had everything figured out. I don't have everything figured out. But what I did figure out and execute on was that I removed something from my life that was weighing on me incredibly heavily all of the time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So we met in 2023 where I remember when well, I think I remember a WhatsApp chat where you finally voiced in the WAM group that like you were going to leave OB because you were kind of like hemming and hawing about it.
Yeah.
And that was over 3 years ago. So this didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a ton of work and foundation that you've laid to help you and your family feel comfortable with this major decision.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you've run, like you said, those worst case scenarios. And it's not that it's going to be like you instantly are soaring and fly. Here's what I picture when we make these big leaps, like that I'm an eagle at the top of a big evergreen on a tall mountain and I'm jumping off, right? With like faith that I'm going to fly. But at first, free fall. At first, it's free fall, right? Like, and then at some point you open your wings and it might still be free fall. But I'm guessing that you're in that space of certainty that like you've run the worst case scenarios, you know there will be free fall, but you have what I call like a runway, a financial and psychological runway where you have faith that you will take off at some point in the next however many months or years, and therefore you'll all be fine because you know that this new trajectory you're on financially and energetically is going to be better for you long term. Is that kind of where you're feeling?
That is exactly right. And it even after you're right. 3 years ago, I started talking about this, and even with careful planning, I never got to the point where I said I'm at the top of this evergreen. I love that visual, and I can stay here because that was not the reality on June 30th. But I have confidence that we did, listen, we knew that there was going to be a hit to my paycheck. So we did do some planning there. But it's not going to be, a permanent solution. But I do have faith that I'm going to figure out how to do it. And sometimes you have to figure it out by actually just being in the situation. And then you surprise yourself. And then the other thing I think that's so important for physicians, and I never knew this because I'd never looked at all, is that we are so in demand. It might not be my dream job, but if I needed to do locums to tide us over for 6 months, I could do locums. There's so many opportunities to do things that my family is not going to starve. And so that is one thing that I think physicians need to really embrace. Once I started looking online, I cannot believe how many headhunters and recruiters reach out to me every single day with locums opportunities, part-time opportunities, telehealth part-time opportunities. There's so much out there once you start looking.
100%. Yes. And that's the narrative that Mona, my co-founder, and I have always told ourselves too, is like, we can always go back, right? Like if this new version doesn't work out, we can always go back to what we had before or some lighter version, like you're saying, a 1099, part-time version or locums temporary thing. There's so many options, but that's like worst case scenario. I haven't had to do that yet. I hope you don't have to either, but it's absolutely there. And that gives us that psychological safety net, I think, to feel like we can keep going with this other thing. So tell me about, okay, maybe we have to cut here, but tell me about can we talk about your new stuff that you're doing in terms of coaching women in menopause and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, in part of thinking about how I could expand my GYN practice, I always, I'm very fortunate. I get to spend time with patients, but it was never enough time. And I was starting to think, how can I expand my offerings? How can I expand the value that I can give my patients? And this came up at the same time that I started to see so many of my patients on GLP-1 medications. And I am in complete support of them. They have been life-changing for people who are struggling with obesity. But I saw a lot of patients who were on or contemplating being on these medications because they had 10 pounds that they just couldn't lose. And I started to do some research into it, and I started to get concerned because I realized how much muscle mass women can lose on these medications. And I noticed that they were not being supported in
Yep.
terms of what their nutrition needed to be, what their strength training needed to be. And I frankly just started to get worried. And I just said, what can I do to show women, to empower my patients that they do have the ability to do this without necessarily taking medication? And so that was sort of the spark that started this thinking. And I decided that I was going to go and do some advanced nutrition training, which I did with Dr. Ali Nowitzki, who put together a whole curriculum called Nutrition for Providers. I so much credit and gratitude to her for doing that teaching for all of us. And it took about 6 months before I felt like I was ready to launch and have the confidence to launch a program. I made up a 12-week curriculum, knowing that it was going to be modified probably many, many times. And I just put it out there to my patients and just said, I want to do a high touch 12-week program where I help focus on proper nutrition, strength training, and habit building. I want to help you reduce the mental drama and the chatter in your head every day about what you should do, not do, should eat, not eat, and really just sort of take that whole emotional piece of it out. So prerequisite reading is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And so basically I just launched and I just said, I don't know how this is going to go, and I was very honest with my first group. I said, you are my betas. And I don't know if this is going to be great or not, but they were all willing to jump in and try with me. And we followed body composition, not weight on the scale. We watched fat, we watched muscle. And they had incredible results and worked so hard. And that was the beginning of Ignite. And I'm now in my fifth cohort of the 12-week program, learning every time and just absolutely enjoying it so much and getting to know my patients so much more deeply, which is incredibly gratifying for me.
That's so awesome. Okay, wait, let's go back. So you got this training. I'm guessing that also in part, like it was for your own benefit too, because we're going through midlife. And as women, it's so important to finally learn this stuff that nobody actually ever taught us. Even in medical school as doctors, we don't know this.
100%. I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just thinking like, I remember I was 43 when I first joined a CrossFit gym and I was with some, 20-year-old girl trying to do barbell squats. And the guy put like 100 pounds on there and she was like, oh, just 100? And I was like, 100 pounds? That's like, and she's like, you don't do squats? And I was like, I've never touched a barbell before. so,
Right.
So I think younger women, thankfully, are much more educated about muscle mass and the importance of weight training than I was growing up in the Jane Fonda era of like, just kind of starve yourself and do the Stairmaster. Like that was kind of what women were supposed to do, right? Like these are all the movies that we saw in the 80s. It was like these women just like sweating it out,
Yeah.
And I had this idea that if I did weight training, I was going to end up looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is ridiculous. Like I can't put on a bicep, even though I've been doing weight training now for years. Like I just can't really grow the muscles, but I have still grown muscles. Like you're saying, when I do the DEXA scans, I know that I'm stronger than I've ever been. I have more lean muscle mass than I've ever had. So it's totally possible to do it. But if you just don't know, you don't know. So with that first group, it sounds like you were just really open and honest with women you already knew in your practice, saying like, I've learned this. I want to teach this. I can relate to you. I've been where you are. Would you be interested in doing this? Did they pay you the first group or how did that work with your beta test?
They did. They did pay me. I think these are patients I had longstanding relationships with. I think they understood that I was truly committed to them having success. And I think they were excited to be part of something from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was a leap of faith on their part, 100%. But I think that what really sealed it for people was that they wanted to marry the nutrition, the strength training, the mindset work with somebody who also knew their medical history, their family medical history, and how can we sort of put this entire picture together? And I'm in New York City. There are a million nutritionists. There are a million fitness, and I'm not doing fitness instructing. I'm just guiding people, but you can have a specialist for every single aspect
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
what you do. And any one of those specialists has more knowledge than I do, quite honestly. But what my patients wanted was one person
Mhm.
to have an overview on everything and to see everything in the context of everything else and to be truly committed to their long-standing success. And they said, I know that every year I'm going to come in after this program and we are going to talk about this, and that accountability is everything. And still to this day, when I ask people to do a review and give me, helpful guidance, um, every single one of them has said it's the accountability and knowing that I was watching and that I cared. And so that I think is something that was very valuable to patients and somewhat unique in terms of all the gazillion offerings there are out there for women right now.
And it's so based on that psychology that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. Like, how do you
Hmm.
increase your chances of success? Like, you state what your goal is publicly to other people.
Yep.
You show up and invite them to hold you accountable to that goal. So, um, and all of those things contribute to increased likelihood of success. And when they pay
Yeah.
for the program, also they're more likely to show up and therefore be accountable to themselves.
That
So,
that is so true, Marissa. And that was remains such a hard thing for me, the money conversation about the program. I'm so deeply uncomfortable with it. However, one thing that we learned from our coaches is
yes.
that the financial commitment is a very, very important part. It's the first step of making change because the financial commitment is the buy-in. And so
Yeah.
whenever I start to feel uncomfortable about it, which I do all the time, I remind myself of that and how the financial commitment to coaching helped me make as much progress as I did. So that's a really important point.
It's 100% true. So we worked with a personal trainer, my husband and I, that I hired in pandemic. And we worked with him for 3 years. He would come to us 3 days a week. And it was a significant investment, as you can imagine. It was like
Hmm.
5 figures every year.
Yep.
And we continued it until we really felt like we had hardwired into ourselves, like this version of ourselves that like, this is how often we're going to work out. This is how we're going
Right.
to measure our progress. Like that it was no longer about him. It was really about us. And
Yeah.
so we kind of like slowly weaned it in the last 18 months or so of like going more virtual, seeing him 2 days a week and then 1 day a week, but
Hmm.
until we had confidence that we could hold on to it. But we valued that. And I know that if I hadn't been paying as much, I wouldn't have shown up to myself and gotten the results that I
100%.
wanted to get. So I have no issue with it anymore now. Like charging what I charge for what we do at SuperDoc Tech, charging what I charge at my parent coaching work, because I know that if for the right person who's serious about the results, that's part of the equation to success. Like
Agree.
it's not about my being greedy or anything like that. It's really about like, I just ask myself, like, whenever I'm making a decision and like, is this the right thing to add to my coaching program? Is this the right thing to add to the business? Like, is it going to get people, is it making people more likely to get the results that they want and that I want for them? And if the
Right.
answer is yes, then the answer is yes. Like, if they pay $5, are they as likely to get the results as if they pay $5,000? No, because it's nothing. Like they didn't commit to it really.
Agree. 100% agree. Yep. And I think that everybody who has success will say the same thing, that that was part of the buy-in for them and part of the reason why they stuck with it until it became a habit, right? And then you don't need the support and the enforcement anymore. It's exactly what you're saying. Once it's a habit, you don't need willpower and you don't need the support. It's just something that you do.
Right. Exactly. Awesome. Well, this was so great chatting with you. I can't believe it's already been 40 minutes. I want to keep
I
going.
know.
Like we try to keep our podcast succinct. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, are you open to supporting other physicians via phone call or email if they're starting their journeys or thinking about things? And if so, how would
Yes.
they reach out to you?
always, always up for a phone call. It's one of the lessons I've learned in the last few years. Never say no to a conversation. And I'm always so happy to support people. I think the best way to get in touch with me is to email me. And you can email me at mshur, that's MSHUR, at fuelfitnessfire.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meredith. This was a really
Thanks,
great
Marissa.
conversation.
This was
Appreciate it.
fantastic. Thank you.